What's up, everyone? I'm James Baney, and I'm here again to do another episode of the Bad Batch Reaction Show. This week, we are talking about Episode 9, The Crossing. I don't have a whole lot to say about this episode. There were some good parts I'll get into here in a second. I think overall, this could be one of those things where they sort of are saying, you know, I didn't really feel like much happened, but there were a few things that sort of set up bigger things, and a few things that also sort of kept with the storyline that should be going through during this time. I'll get into specifics here in a minute. First thing I want to talk about, though, is I got to admire these guys' resilience. No matter what, it seems like they get put into these crazy situations, and they always just seem to get along. Now, I know these are retellings of stories. They aren't exactly what happened. That's kind of a thing with me. You guys might think differently. Ask me if you don't know what I'm talking about. But in the real version, I could see Tech and Wrecker sort of consistently batting heads over this sort of thing. Like, it was your fault, you left the ship, no it wasn't, and then they get defensive and they go back and forth. But it's one of these things, like, these guys always seem to manage to get over the situation and look at the task at hand. What's the most important thing? What's the most important objective? Like, they're out of ship, they're trapped, they have they just extracted this material, they have none of it left. They keep getting into these bad situations, which are always life and death, and yet they seem to just bounce back at being like, okay, come on. All right, where are we at now? All right, what's the next step? All right, we need to just find a way out of here. Let's get to work. Complaining doesn't help anything. Let's keep moving forward. You got to admire that. But let's get to the ship. I think this is probably the one thing out of this episode that's going to be the most like set up for future episodes. They get their ship stolen, and they show the bounty hunter who steals it multiple times. I don't know if that's so that you recognize that person in a later episode, or if it's like, even now that the episode's out, like, am I supposed to know who that is? I don't think so. I think it's just supposed to be a random sort of bounty hunter, or as they said, a poacher, you know? So they get the ship stolen. That's a big deal. And I don't think it's as easy as we're never going to see that ship again. So I think this is set up for a future episode, and you got to put it in here somewhere. This is the episode where they get their ship stolen. One thing I did like about this episode that you don't normally see in Star Wars is talking about the animal life that isn't sentient. Now, we got something like that in The Last Jedi, where they were talking about the Fathiers, or, you know, occasionally they'd show it in the prequels. They'd be in an area and you would see animals just kind of around, and they're kind of interacting with the people. Obviously in Attack of the Clones, like, the animals were inside the arena. But this is one of those things where, like, I like seeing Star Wars where they interact with actual wildlife. And if you're looking at most of the movies and even live action TV show, it usually doesn't happen unless the wildlife is sort of this like crazy parallel to them. And in this case, yes, they were sort of in danger because the animal, but it wasn't the animal themselves attacking it. It was sort of like they were in a situation where there was a stampede coming through because of the storm. And I don't know, I just kind of like the interaction of seeing Star Wars with sort of that natural world, which was sort of the intent with the Ewoks, but obviously those are semi-sentient or sentient, and well, definitely sentient, because we know that there are some Ewoks that are very smart. I think my point being that I like it when animals show up in Star Wars, specifically when they're not the adversary of a conflict. Let me know if I'm missing a really good example in the comments. There's probably something I'm missing, but I'd like to see it again. The thing I mentioned before that's sort of this is the ongoing conflict that should be happening throughout these episodes is the Omega dealing with Echo's leaving, and the whole conflict that she has with Tech about I was only telling her the truth. She already knows the truth. That's what's upset her. This is good. I like this discussion that they're having. I think it's interesting that Tech's getting another sort of focused episode. It almost makes you feel like Wrecker should sort of have his focused episode too. Maybe I'm missing some in the first season, but I know that coming out of the first season, Tech felt a little less noted, and so they're making him a point to have some character development in this season, which is good. But I thought it was interesting that she was having those problems, and then it ended up that that Tech was able to kind of talk her through that, and they could say that they're dealing with the issues on their own, in their own way. And it's sort of this overlying, like, what does it mean to be a part of the Bad Batch, and what happens when you're over there, or what happens when you die, or what happens. And I think all of this is potentially set up for like, what is Crosshair doing right now, and is he part of the Bad Batch? Will he always be part of the Bad Batch, whether he's over there or over there? It's interesting. I think this is a good dynamic for this episode, and I'm glad it happened. Last thing is just, I think this is a setup episode, clearly. It felt like a part 1 of part 2. When we get to the very end, they didn't happily make it off the planet. They're still on the planet. So expect next week for them to be, again, trying to get from point A to point B, possibly procuring another ship, possibly then running into, this is what I expect, this is my prediction. I think they're going to run into the people that stole the ship, and they go, oh my God, it's right there. Well, we got to steal it back, right? Omega was making that point. That's our ship. It belongs to us. That's our home. Let's go. And then maybe we'll even see that poacher guy again. I don't know. I imagine there's a point to, showing that he stole the ship and setting up for a second episode. They didn't call this part 1, part 2, but at the end of the day, I think next week we're going to see them getting back their ship, or at least getting home. So that's my prediction. Now it's time for you guys to tell me your predictions. You got comments below. You got a thumbs up if you want to click it. If you're here for the first time, just checking out the Bad Batch review, subscribe, because we talk Star Wars all the time, multiple times a week, including our live show, The Resistance Broadcast, as well as our not live show, The Resistance Broadcast, which is a second episode that we do a week. But other than that, I've been James Baney. I'm going to be here next week talking about the next episode of The Bad Batch. And until then, I will see you later.